For 60 years, Boeing was the absolute gold standard of engineering. It built the iconic 747, it helped put humans on the moon, and it made some of the safest, most advanced planes in the entire sky. The word Boeing simply meant trust. Then, on a January evening in 2024, a door plug blew clean off a brand new Boeing 737 in midair. And it was only the latest in a long string of disasters that have battered the company's once untouchable name. And here is the single number that helps explain it. In the years right before the crisis, Boeing spent around $43 billion. Not on new planes and not on new factories, but on buying back its very own stock. So how does a company that literally helped reach the moon slowly, quietly forget how to reliably build a door? It's a genuine warning for every great company on Earth. It is the story of exactly what happens when the people counting the money take over from the people actually building the product. So, let's follow the money. For most of its long history, Boeing was run, top to bottom, by engineers. People who genuinely lived and breathed planes, and who believed one single thing above all else: get the engineering right, and the profits will surely follow. And that deep obsession built an absolutely extraordinary safety record. Boeing's reputation was its single greatest asset. Passengers simply trusted that if it said Boeing on the side, it would get them safely home. When they bet the entire company on the giant 747 back in the 1960s, it was a pure engineer's gamble. Spend whatever it takes, build something truly magnificent, and just trust that the world will gladly pay for it. And it worked spectacularly. So that was the culture for decades. Engineering first, money second. And it made Boeing one of the most respected, most admired companies anywhere in the world. And then, very quietly, that whole culture got turned upside down. The real turning point came in 1997 when Boeing merged with a big rival, McDonnell Douglas. Now, on paper, Boeing was clearly the buyer. But in the end, it was McDonnell Douglas's culture that quietly took over. And that culture was very different indeed. It prized aggressive cost-cutting, shareholder returns, and hitting financial targets, far above the slower, more expensive work of careful engineering. The accountants, step by step, replaced the engineers at the very top. And here's a telling little sign. In 2001, Boeing moved its headquarters away from its factories, all the way to Chicago, and later to Virginia. So the bosses were now physically and culturally very far from the people actually building the planes. And the new mission was crystal clear: keep Wall Street happy, push that stock price up. And the single most reliable way to do exactly that was to return absolutely enormous amounts of cash straight to shareholders. Now, remember a buyback? A company spends its spare cash buying its own shares, which neatly lifts the stock price. Well, Boeing became a total champion of it, pouring out tens of billions of dollars, year after year after year. In total, in the years leading right up to the crisis, Boeing spent around $43 billion on those buybacks. Money that could, instead, have designed an all-new, modern, far safer aircraft, completely from a clean sheet. But a brand new clean sheet plane costs an absolute fortune, and it takes a whole decade. And Wall Street wanted its results right now. So instead of building the plane of the future, Boeing just kept squeezing the plane of the past. And that plane was the 737, a core design dating all the way back to the 1960s. Rather than fully replace it, Boeing bolted bigger, heavier, modern engines onto the old frame and called it the 737 MAX, a shortcut to save time and money. But those big new engines didn't quite fit that old design properly. So Boeing added a little piece of software to quietly compensate. And then, to avoid the cost of retraining pilots, it barely even told anyone that the software existed. And in 2018 and again in 2019, that hidden software malfunctioned on 2 separate flights. Two brand new 737 MAX jets crashed, killing 346 people. And the entire MAX fleet was grounded worldwide. And investigators soon found a much deeper rot. To cut its costs, Boeing had outsourced huge chunks of its planes to outside suppliers, then pressured them and its own workers relentlessly to just move faster and cheaper. And quality very quietly slipped. And for a company whose entire value rested on trust, this was completely catastrophic. The one thing it had spent an entire century carefully building, its reputation, now began to crumble. Now, you'd really think that two fatal crashes would force a complete reset. But then, in 2024, that door plug blew off mid-flight. And investigators found the panel had been reinstalled, missing 4 key bolts. So just think about how basic that actually is. This wasn't some exotic, cutting-edge engineering failure. It was bolts, the exact kind of fundamental quality slip that the old engineering-obsessed Boeing would have caught in its sleep. And the fallout was genuinely brutal. Regulators capped how many planes Boeing was even allowed to build, and its deliveries slumped hard. And remember, each undelivered plane is millions of dollars in cash that the company simply doesn't collect. And it fit a pattern that was now just impossible to ignore. A company that had relentlessly put cost and speed ahead of careful engineering was now, very publicly and very painfully, paying the price for it. And now, here's the truly bitter irony of it all. All of that cost-cutting and all of those buybacks were meant to make Boeing far more valuable. Instead, they did the exact, precise opposite. Because ever since the MAX crisis, Boeing has lost tens of billions of dollars. Its stock fell hard, its debt ballooned, and it has burned through enormous piles of cash, just trying to fix the problems it created to save money. So the company that spent $43 billion propping up its own share price then watched that very share price collapse anyway the moment the planes and the trust started failing. Because it turns out that you simply cannot, over the long run, financially engineer your way out of a deep problem that was caused in the first place by abandoning actual, real engineering. And so Boeing's story is really a warning that reaches very far beyond just planes. It's about what happens when a company quietly stops asking, "Is this excellent?" and starts only ever asking, "What does this do to the stock?" Because a great company is, in the very end, a culture. Boeing's was patiently built by people obsessed with the product itself. And when that obsession got replaced by an obsession with the share price, the product slowly, quietly decayed. And honestly, the scariest part is just how invisible it all is. For years and years, the buybacks looked brilliant, and the stock just soared. The deep rot underneath only became visible when, quite literally, the planes themselves started falling apart. Boeing is now desperately trying to claw its old culture back, slowing right down, refocusing on quality, putting the engineers back in charge. But a reputation takes decades to build, and just a single moment to break. And rebuilding it is the very hardest job of all. So here's the real, lasting lesson, hidden inside that single door plug. A company's stock price and its actual underlying health can quietly drift apart for years, right up until the very day that reality comes crashing back in. Boeing didn't forget how to build planes overnight, all at once. It happened one cut corner, one buyback, and one quarterly target at a time, until the company that once reached the moon couldn't reliably fasten a door. So the next time you hear that some beloved company is busy maximizing shareholder value, it is always worth quietly asking what, exactly, it might be giving up in order to do it.